Broads Media.
Oh boy, how'd the Sixers land feel about this one? Daryl Morey makes a couple of splashes and one huge fucking cannonball. Paul George is a Sixer. We'll talk about it. Before we do, if you are new to the channel, hello, make sure you hit the subscribe button and smash the thumbs up button as well. Make sure you take me on the road with you when you search Sports Talk with Broads on all your podcasting platforms. Bada bing, bada boom. I'm sitting right there waiting for you. You can plug me into your truck. There's nothing sweeter. Don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and a review there. It would mean the world and help out with the algorithms. And lastly, if you want access to Coffee with Broads, which I live stream twice a week here on YouTube, you can join the memberships here on YouTube. And you also get access to our Discord channel, a 24/7 chat room with the whole membership. And we get to have all sorts of fun in there. Communicate during games, communicate during the draft, during free agency. It's a lot of fun. So thank you guys all so much and enjoy the show. I want to start this show off with a public service announcement. Don't go back and listen to what I said as soon as the offseason started in regards to Paul George. That was a very emotionally unstable version of me. As you can tell now, I'm very emotionally stable. So we're good. This is going to be great. I'm sucked right back in. I'm a pathetic piece of shit. But here we are. Kelly Oubre back in action. Andre Drummond here. Eric Gordon, savvy veteran, who I trust if the ball swings his way. I didn't trust Buddy Hield. That dude did not know what playoff ball was going to be like. And the second he finally witnessed it and experienced it, fucking crumbled. That won't happen with Eric Gordon. So you got that. You got Maxey getting his bag, and you kept assets by not having to trade for a Jimmy Butler, not having to trade for a Brandon Ingram. So now Daryl Morey has even more assets to his name. For whatever that's worth. Now, all jokes aside here, how do I feel? I'm going with the mentality of, so you're telling me there's a chance. They still have a lot to prove to me, but based off of the current state of free agency and knowing what was possible this offseason, they're doing essentially as best as they could. There's not much more that they can do than what Daryl Morey is doing. Now, there's still room to improve. There's still room to make adds to this roster. But just in regards to having majority of the meat and potatoes done, I don't know what else I could have demanded or expected. They got their guy. They added a wing to a guard and a center. So naturally, it's a solid fit. And while he's signed here until he's 38 years old, and there may be some concern on how his final year of the deal is, first off, you only need one of those years to make it worth it. You don't need him to be elite for 4 seasons to make this result in a championship. You need it to be a good fit and good chemistry so collectively as a unit, they can tear down that second round issue and get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And that's not the goal, but you have to hit that first prior to getting to the NBA Finals run. And are they better than Boston? I can't sit here today and tell you that they're better than the champion of last season that has a Drew Holiday, a Kristaps Porzingis, a Brown who already destroyed the dragon or slayed the dragon and got the Larry O'Brien in his arms, a finals MVP on his wall. Like, what do you want me to do? No, I can't tell you they're better than Boston. Are they better than Milwaukee? I don't know. If they are healthy, I don't know what Milwaukee is healthy. I don't know what the Sixers are healthy either. Paul George played 74 games last season, so while there were issues with him staying upright throughout particular times in his career, 74 games, I'd sign on the dotted lines for that right now. 41% clip from three, 22 points per game. No matter how you feel about if he comes up small in the playoffs or this and that, which I always find funny because everyone hasn't shown up big in the playoffs to start. You never have the moment until you have the moment. And I do believe that Paul George has had moments in the playoffs. He's also failed, but he's also had moments. Maybe they were a ways away ago. Maybe they were a long time ago. Maybe they were in Indiana. Maybe it wasn't particularly last season. But there's a big difference between having Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey on your team and then having to be the guy or having to play a bigger role. Would I want Paul George to be the face of my franchise, number one, ball in his hands, and go win me a title? No. Would I want him to be a good collective weapon in a world where you have Embiid getting double-teamed constantly because if not, he's going to eat you alive? Tyrese Maxey with his speed that can create so much space for your wings and for your Paul Georges, Eric Gordons of the world, because you got to realize that he's going to blow by it, and if he doesn't find a way to pass it to the perimeter for an open look, he's going to toast you with his speed and lay it in for two off the glass, maybe even earn some free throws this year and get some respect from the damn refs and the damn whistles to make it a three-point play. So he doesn't need to be, let's go, Paul George, go take us to title land by yourself. You need him to be a good complementary star in the mix of three stars. That's a different philosophy. And with Kawhi and with James Harden, it didn't work. Injuries took the toll on that team. The Kawhi Leonard experience has always been a bit wonky. I can't apply that to Kawhi and not apply that to Joel Embiid. But, I've seen Joel Embiid with half a face and half a leg give you 50 and also give you 40 in a closeout game with your season on the line. So even when Joel Embiid is banged up, he's still giving you insane amount of production. Not just good production, insane amount of production. And Paul George can help you out with size and defense on the wing. He's not the same defender he once was, but he's no stiff either at this age. He can still hold his own and not get pushed around like a rag doll and thrown around. So he still gives you that. And you need help with size. And you need help defending that area of the floor with Joel Embiid as the anchor. Yeah, we have small guards. Right now, Jared McCain, I don't know exactly what his role is going to be, but he's still here. I thought maybe he'd be in a trade package, this and that. He's still here as a 6'2" guard with Maxey, 6-foot guard. These guys are small. So if they're out there, Paul George has some size, Embiid with the anchor. For whatever it's worth, that's there. Andre Drummond with the toughness and the rebounding, that's there. The Knicks killed you on the glass last season. The only thing, though, that makes me rebuttal that point about Andre Drummond and his clear and obvious trait of eating up on the glass is him and Joel Embiid are not going to be spending much time together on the floor in the playoffs. Embiid's going to be playing 40-something minutes a night. Andre Drummond for 6, 7, 8 minutes of playoff basketball. Wow, don't get me wrong. Those 6, 7, 8 minutes can swing a game. Joel Embiid leaves the floor, they're minus 85,000. When Joel Embiid is on the floor, they're plus 75,000. So yes, those minutes are extremely important. It's not as if the impact of Andre Drummond in a series against the Knicks is going to be where he's on the floor for 40 minutes and he's just destroying the opponent on the glass. It's not going to happen. I actually had one caller last night say he wants to have Joel Embiid play the 4 and you change your offensive philosophy so Andre Drummond can be that dominant force on the glass. I said, hold on a second. Dude, You don't bring in Andre Drummond and then change the way Joel Embiid plays, operating from the nail, being the anchor on the defensive side in the paint and bringing his you don't change Joel Embiid because Andre Drummond. Please. Let's use the brain cells a little bit. Would I have had any interest in Klay Thompson? Yeah, I would have if you couldn't get Paul George. Paul George made the most sense when everything settled down, just due to the fact that if he hit free agency, of course, he had to opt out and all of that. And there was the report that Golden State wanted to have a sign and trade occur, but the Clippers didn't want anything to do with giving him over to the Golden State Warriors and blah, blah, blah. I don't know how much is real, how much is not. There is so much BS that goes down over 72 hours with Woj and Shams. Remember, it was a week ago that it was reported the Sixers are apparently out on Paul George and they don't want anything to do with them and they're moving on. No, they're not. They're trying to play a leverage game. They're trying to send and leak information publicly for perception. Paul George was always number one in their crosshairs of let's go get him. He was always the emphasis. He was always the guy that Daryl Morey wanted to get. Paul George was going to be a Sixer. So as much as this has been reported, that has been reported, this and that, come on. A week ago, they were done with it. And they were ready to move on to the next best thing. But that was never the case. The eye was always on the prize. And credit to Daryl Morey because, well, if he wants someone, he goes and gets somebody. And for the people that despise the move, I don't know if this is going to be good enough. And I lean towards it's not because there is still some scar tissue left around my entire body from the Sixers playoff seasons and the postseason failures and all that stuff. But reality is they had to do this. They had to do this because there's nothing else to do that would satisfy you if you are a hater of this. Like, I don't know what else was potentially available. Lauri Markkanen, for example. I've heard Markkanen forever now. Go get Markkanen, go get Markkanen. Even if you traded to go get Markkanen, who's a good player, fun player, exciting player, I wouldn't have been mad. I prefer the route that they went here. Then, if they swung and they missed, and Paul George wanted to stay with Los Angeles, then fine. Talk me into Klay, talk me into Markkanen trade, talk me into Jimmy Butler, whatever, because you have to try and salvage this Joel Embiid run. This is probably the last attempt. And credit to Tyrese Maxey, because without him blossoming into what he's become, the window might have been closed. The window would be completely different, and I don't know if Joel Embiid stays here. And I wouldn't have even been mad at Joel Embiid. I would have understood. But if they never drafted Tyrese Maxey, credit to Daryl Morey for that, because he did do that, by the way. Joel Embiid could have easily demanded to go to a different city because the Sixers are that much of a dumpster fire organization. So Tyrese Maxey somewhat saved the Joel Embiid attempt. It might not be enough, but he did save the attempt. Let's get to the Kelly Oubre side of this. He signed here with, 2 years, and then there's a player option and all. I got no issue with it. Fans like him. He earned a lot of respect based off of last year, dealing with the contract that he was offered and around the league, maybe what the NBA world thought of him, what the NBA society thought he could be. He clearly proved that he could be better than what they expected. I'm not as high on Kelly Oubre as everybody else, but he's fine. He's fine. Sometimes he does things that annoys me and pisses me off like no other. But then there's moments where he really steps up. He's just inconsistent for me, and it makes sense because that's probably what he is, and nobody expected him to even have the highs that he has. So when he has the highs that he does, it's refreshing and it's solid, and no one probably thought that he'd have those highs again. It's just so up and down. It's this roller coaster ride of I don't know what Kelly Oubre I'm getting on a night-to-night basis, but when you're not as relied upon as you were last season, Tobias Harris, max contract player, giving you 0 points in a closeout game, I need more from Kelly Oubre, and it's unfair to put those level of expectations on Oubre because that's not what he is. So maybe I was angry at him and mad at him as a default and as a mechanism of I'm actually really aggravated with Tobias and he's now getting the blame for it. It's very possible that that's the case. Now with Paul George, look, you aren't going to get anything close to the disaster that Tobias was. And what I do believe will happen is we'll recognize maybe 18, 19, 20, 21 games into the season, once we get through a good sample size of what Paul George brings, holy hell, this is far superior to the Tobias Harris experience. So Clippers fans are probably ready to move on, and they're angry about maybe what Paul George provided, and they're saying, fine, it's over. Let's try something different, yada, yada, yada. They're trying to trade Russell Westbrook. They're trying to trade PJ Tucker. They're making some moves and making some additions. So they're clearly on their way of getting a whole entire facelift, and fine. And fans probably want that now, and fine. Just like wherever Tobias Harris signs, they're going to convince themselves by the end of it, yeah, but he's not making a max contract. Yeah, but his veteran presence does matter. Yeah, but he dealt with a lot in Philadelphia. It's probably nice for him to get that breath of fresh air and start all over and get a new town and all that weight that was weighing him down and all the controversy and all the pressure and all the intense media. It's time for a new sense of urgency in a different city, and I think that it's very logical maybe to take that approach if you sign Tobias to a deal that financially benefits your club and thinks that it's a good fit, okay? We're going from Tobias, though. So the way that we dissect this trade and dissect his impact is, let's look at the upgrade from what we were getting and what we are about to get. And the baseline is Tobias Harris on a max deal. Well, it's going to be very, very eye-opening. Very eye-opening on the difference and how much maybe Tobias has been holding them back, especially last season. There were plenty of seasons where I thought Tobias got some blame where it wasn't warranted, and that's not the conversation for today, and nobody cares, and that's fine. But last season in particular, he just folded and crumbled big time. All right, let's listen to ESPN. Get Up obviously broke it all down this morning, and this is what they had to say on the addition to Paul George to the Sixers.
Adrian summed it up before. The Sixers have told Joel Embiid for a year to be patient and to wait. Mm-hmm. And we're going to go out next summer. We're going to get the best player we can get, and we're going to put the best team around you we possibly can. The Sixers now have the best big three in the NBA. It's really not close. With the three guys they have now, all of whom were all-stars last year, you got a lead guard in Maxey, you got an elite two-way wing in Embiid, or in Paul George, you've got maybe the most dominant big in the league in Joel Embiid. They fit together perfectly. They complement each other in every way on the court. They're versatile. Paul George is an elite shooter. You have two elite shooters now, given spacing around Embiid. They can go out and get any kind of role players that can fit alongside them. They're versatile in a lot of ways. They have the highest ceiling now of any team in the league but the Boston Celtics. And they can go toe-to-toe with the Celtics depending on how healthy these guys are, which is obviously the biggest question. Paul George missed a bunch of time. You mentioned Allen. Joel has missed a lot of time. But if they're healthy in the spring, which obviously is going to be a huge if,
yes,
they are as good as any team in the league. And this isn't like the Phoenix Suns putting this big three together last year that was flawed from the start. This is a group that fits together perfectly. And the Sixers were a team that a year ago didn't really have a chance to win a title. Now they can go into the season saying, we have a legitimate shot to win a title with Paul George, which is why, Alan, you're right. For Philadelphia, given this contract to Paul George right now, they had to do it when they got the opportunity. They took advantage of it.
They had to do it. They had to do it. I think that's fair analysis. The only thing that I'll push back on is, and this is probably just because we are so tied down to the losses year in and year out, and it runs through our bloodstream, but I'm just not going to jump to the conclusion that they can have the best big three, or they do now have the best big three, and they could take the Celtics in a series. I'm not jumping to that extreme. Is it possible? Sure. No doubt. And this is a Joel Embiid thing. When you have Joel Embiid, everything is possible. possible. Everything is potentially there. You absolutely have a chance when you have one of the best skilled players in the entire NBA. Embiid's greatness and his force and him being a juggernaut is always going to give you that opportunity to be right there. That's why you have to try and salvage the experience, because his presence starts it all. And it wouldn't surprise me if his MVP-like insane tear can bring you to the promised land at any particular time. That's what great athletes do, and that's why Embiid is super special. It's in him. It's just, can we make it all work together? So that's number one. I'm always afraid to jump to the full-on conclusion of, well, look at the big three. Brooklyn did it with Kyrie, with Kevin Durant, and James Harden. The Phoenix Suns tried it with Kevin Durant, with Chris Paul, with Devin Booker. You know, they've tried some things, and I feel we've gotten enamored as society with these big threes, and it's backfired more than it helped. But I don't know if I look at this the same way as that, only because the Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey thing has been blossoming for so many years now that you're just looking for the, I hate to use the word complimentary star because it seems like I devalue Paul George at that time, but it's almost like we've been working together with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey for multiple seasons now as them with the two-headed monster. You're looking to just add the right surrounding pieces compared to where some of these big threes it was, who the hell are the Brooklyn Nets? And then now all of a sudden it's Kyrie, James Harden, Kevin Durant. All right, let's just throw them all out there and go. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel that there's more build with this, and maybe that's me just being an absolute idiot. I mean, maybe that's me just trying to find a little path here to justify the Sixers compared to others. I don't know. But the one thing about the injuries that it's not an excuse. I'm just starting to recognize this. Like, why were the Bucks bad this year by the end? Why did the Bucks not go farther into the playoffs? Well, they weren't healthy. What held the Knicks back? They weren't healthy. What happened with Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers a lot of the times? Well, Kawhi's always been a bit banged up. Kristaps Porzingis couldn't play with the Celtics. He eventually returned. He was dealing with some stuff. Golden State Warriors who was it? Well, or was it when Kevin Durant got hurt? When the Toronto Raptors won the championship, when Kawhi Leonard did his thing? My point is, the whole, Joel Embiid is always injured in the playoffs, which is fair. Trust me, I am not rebuttaling that point. It's fair. My point is, it's not out of the norm of what the NBA is. It's not as if the whole league is constantly healthy every single playoff run, and Joel is the only one that's hurting or limping his way to the finish. Now, at some point, we need him to stay more healthy than he has been to give us a shot, because I'm giving you those examples of the teams that are failing and coming up small due to injuries holding them back. So, yes, injuries will hold back this team, and that's apparent. But I've also seen Joel Embiid push through it and give you 50 and give you 40 in a closeout game. So if there are others that can step up and not give you 0 in a closeout game, right? One max contract guy gave you 0 and the other gave you 40. And one guy was on half a face and half a leg. So I do actually have some faith that Embiid, even if he isn't 100%, which I'm never going to rule him in as 100%, but if he's 75% and 80% and he's banged up and nicked up, but he's still some version of a banged up Embiid, I know that he can still perform through that because I've seen it just last year. The farthest thing from the problem last season and not being able to beat the Knicks was Joel Embiid. Part of it was Tyrese Maxey still growing. Part of it is Buddy Hield, your acquisition at the deadline, and your three-point spacing is a disaster and absolutely a joke. And now you replace that with Eric Gordon. Now you replace that with something along those lines. So, just a veteran who's been around the block who can take threes. There was one time in his career, my man was popping about 9 threes per game. It's now dwindled down to about 5 or so, which is good. It's solid. That's where we want him to be-ish for this role. But before we get to the Anytime Hotline, I do want to say this on the Andre Drummond front. I am so sick and tired of the Paul Reeds of the world, of those younger centers that are spry, that have the ability to run up and down the floor and all, and they are what they are, but I'm done with that. I'm done with it. Now, it seems like forever now, collectively as a unit, whoever they put in place behind Joel Embiid hasn't been good enough, but I do like the idea of a bigger body, a more ready NBA body, and a Andre Drummond a few years back when they tried Dwight Howard. I like that thought process more than the Paul Reed thing. I'm done with it. The B-ball Paul, it didn't work, all right? It's not a recipe for success. I'm trying to go win a championship, and I want more of the big shoulder motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference in the paint when it's a big shoulder motherfucker compared to the young, shiny toy of the youth, if that even makes any sense. So I like the Drummond angle. I do. It's time to win. It's time to get the veterans around the block. I like the Drummond move. The Bulls are a disaster, though. They wanted to stay in last season at the deadline, so they do. They miss out on picks for Drummond. They send Caruso to OKC for not much back in return. They are a legit mess. I wonder how they're going to handle the Levine thing. But I'll tell you what, I am glad that we don't have anything to do with that man, because I want nothing to do with Zach LaVine at all. At all. Not that I ever thought it was close. But if they were going to strike, let's say Paul George stayed with the Clippers. Let's say Klay Thompson went elsewhere. Let's say that Jimmy Butler stayed with and things started to fall, the domino started to fall. I wouldn't be surprised, because let's be honest, the Sixers were desperate if option 6, option 5 was Zach LaVine. And you probably could have got him for nothing, knowing how bad Chicago was. So trust me, it probably was option 5, 6. If the alternative was nothing, it was that. It was that. But to Daryl Morey's credit, he did preach patience with Joel. And I have to imagine right now Joel Embiid is super thrilled knowing that Paul George is tied up, knowing that Maxi's tied up. The weird thing about the George stuff is, if you're the Clippers, right, and you were willing to go 3 years, and the difference where the Sixers wanted to go that extra mile to give him the 4th, secure the bag, give him that extra 50+ million and all. If you're trying to win, if you're the Clippers and you're trying to win, you're telling me the difference in the next 3 years of Paul George would be adding the 4th year? So you keep James Harden, you sign him to a 2-year deal, $70 million or so, which tells you where the market was for him compared to what he thought he was. Remember, I want the max, I demand the big ticket. Well, you didn't necessarily get that, James. So Daryl Morey read the room properly, read the market properly. That's why James Harden was pissed and started to call him a liar and say you can't trust him. Well, it looks like he knew exactly what the market was for you. But with the Clippers, I just think if you're in all now, if you're all in now, 1 year at 38 shouldn't stop you from going in for the next 3 seasons. At some point, though, it's time to shake things up and to get some new blood in there and to get new players and to try something different. So I guess unless you're in the thick of the day-to-day Clippers grind, it's a little bit easier to look at it from a 1,000-foot view without the emotional ties, for whatever that's worth. All right, let's listen to Mark Jackson of NBC Sports Philadelphia break down Paul George.
We got Paul George. Let me tell you something. We bring about 24 points a game, 4 assists, 5 rebounds. This man is so dynamic. He battles through adversity early in his career with his catastrophic injury and able to get better every year. Every year he shows signs of developing more as an elite player. He's a great person, great father, great mentor to a lot of kids that I know of personally. And let me tell you something. That's a lot of buckets here. That's a lot of dynamic buckets here. And also somebody very good on the defensive end. Mm-hmm. That's a match made in heaven.
I do feel that we are going to be wowed by some of his offensive games. I really do. I think he's going to have moments where like, oh, shit, that's a Paul George moment. So, as I just mentioned, right, when you're not watching it with the set of eyes of Sixers basketball, you watch things differently. And I'd be lying if I told you I watch much regular season outside of the Sixers basketball as much as I used to. I don't. So I'm not catching much 10:30 TNT games of the Clippers versus the Lakers last season when the Lakers are a 500 team and Kawhi's not playing one day and the next day it's this, it's that. I'm just being honest with you. I don't give a damn enough to dive in like maybe I used to when I was younger. So with that, I wonder when we watch Paul George go for 34, and then he follows that up with 28, and then he follows that up with 29, and he follows that up with 30, and we're just seeing a 5-game stretch of holy hell, this is outrageous. Holy hell, he's clocking in, man, and he's drilling 5 threes, and he's hot right now, and he's cooking, and he's carrying the team. We're going to say, whoa, Tobias wasn't doing that. Tobias never did that. Paul George can do that. He can. Won't be every game, but he does have the ability for stretches to pop off. Tobias's pop-off was 20. And maybe it was 6 of 8 in the first half, and then he finishes with 8 field goals. And he only takes 3 in the second half. He always got lost. I would be stunned if Paul George gets lost and becomes a non-factor. Tobias never understood his role. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, and you're not just going to snap your fingers and know how to play with Joel Embiid. The game gets easier because of the emphasis that gets locked on him, but just in general, yeah, the first 5 games won't be like the last 5 games. The first 5 games won't be as detailed and won't be as clicked and locked as, let's say, game 55, 60, 65. It will take time to figure it out. But Tobias was still trying to figure it out in his last year of his deal. He was still trying to figure out what the role was. And the problem is, I don't know if the coaches knew what was best for him because it was that confusing of a situation. But I don't think there's much confusion on this move. You know what Paul George can be. You know what he can apply to the court. So he's not going to be lost and without an idea of a role. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's take a couple anytime hotline calls.
Happy morning, birds. Just woke up and saw the news of Paul George. My initial thoughts are, I mean, I'm not a huge Paul George fan. You're paying him a 34-year-old $53 million for 4 years. I'm still waiting for Playoff P to really, play like Playoff P on a more consistent basis. He's injury prone. I just question his lack of tenacity if he's going to be that guy to really put us over the hump. But at the same time, there wasn't really much to really go for in free agency, so it was kind of like you saw it coming. I'm just looking for a first game against Tatum. I want to see what this guy's going to do. Can he take him? Can he defend him? That's what we need. But overall, we'll see. Not too excited, not too sad, but we'll see.
All right, and I can't knock that. I really can. I mentioned the scar tissue before, and I understand. The one thing, though, that is fascinating is you mentioned the playoff P thing, right? Can playoff P, you said the lack of tenacity. That was the quote, the lack of tenacity, if he's going to be the guy to get us over the hump. Here's reality. Joel Embiid is. The growth of Maxey is. Paul George, I don't want to diminish how great he is, but the Paul George move, in my eyes, unless I'm reading this the wrong way, and he can take over in spurts, and he has the ability to, but it's the complementary to Joel. So, I don't know, maybe when I hear tenacity and can he, take us over the hump, when I hear that, my brain automatically goes to, okay, put the ball in Paul George's hands, have him play isolation ball, break down defenders, and go win us games. I don't think that's the role. I just mentioned roles, right? I don't think that's the role of Paul George, is to go win us nonstop playoff games back to back to back. No, he has to be a crucial part of the team success, of the team winning. And yes, paying someone $53 million, I expect him to be a staple when he scores and averages 22 points per game and can shoot the rock from behind the arc from a 40% clip. But it's really about the collective unit of Maxey, Embiid, and Paul George together as a whole, and it's them. Can those three collectively, with a nice surrounding group and core, be enough to get over the hump? Not Paul George specifically due to tenacity. Because when I hear tenacity, I think, give me the ball, I'm the alpha, I'm dominating, it's my time, every game, playoffs, my time. And that's I don't want that from Paul. If that's the case and Paul George wants that, then we're screwed. And I don't think Paul George wants that. There's a reason why he wanted to team up with Kawhi, and he wanted to work together with the Clippers and have some of that for him over there. I don't think he wants that, but it's not about that. And maybe you using those words isn't what I perceive. Maybe I'm just wrong and I'm flawed by reading it that way. But whenever I hear lack of tenacity, I think they want Jimmy Butler's personality. They want that attitude, that edge. This grouping of Maxey, Embiid, and Paul George is different from that. It's not Kobe. It's not Kobe. You know? But I'm not going to knock you for maybe being a little on the move, because you want to be proven. You want to see it. You don't want to jump all in with this Sixers team because they broke your heart too many times. That's fair. This call came in Sunday at 5 p.m. So this is prior to free agency starting. But it's a Paul George call.
If we get Paul George, I'm going to throw up. I hate that man so much. And not because of his outside personality. He actually is a really cool dude and hilarious. His podcast is a gem. He is literally James Harden. He's the same player. Not as good as a passer, better defender and rebounder. What I'm saying is he is perfect. He is Tobias Harris with the scoring ability of James Harden. He'll drop 40 if he can, but then in the ECF, he'll give you 7 fucking points.
The difference is you don't, first off, if you're Tobias Harris with better scoring, you're not Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris give you 0 points in a playoff game. And while there have been ugly playoff moments for Paul George, this is why I can't just go off that. There's no such thing as a player in the NBA that hasn't had bad playoff moments. LeBron James has had horrendous playoff moments. There's been bad playoff moments. So if the best ever in LeBron James can have bad playoff moments, how do you think Paul George is going to look? There's going to be bad moments. But what you didn't do is provide the good moments. James Harden, I think you can actually make the argument, as much as I stand by making that move for Ben Simmons, there's less good moments to go off of with James Harden, but they're still going. He drops 50, and he won 2 games in your Boston Celtics series for you. He won 2 of those games for you. So as much as we knock James Harden, no one ever brings up the games that you win solely because he put the entire roster on your back when you desperately needed it. That happened out of James Harden. But there's plenty of good Paul George playoff moments that no one brings up, and they only look at the bad. I just want you to do both. That's all. Yes, there's bad playoff Paul George moments, playoff P moment, no doubt about it. Yes. I won't run away from that. But I can't pretend like there's never any good. And with the collective group of Embiid and Maxey, there's more wiggle room around maybe quieter days. What if he scores 18, 16? No. And a 16-point effort from Paul George. Not his best day, not garbage, but 16, 15 points, 16 points, and beat his 40. Maxey's got 24. Eric Gordon knocks down a couple threes. It's not live and die with Paul George. I don't believe that's the move here, or that's the thought process game by game. So we'll see. But I'm not going to knock anybody for being angry with it. I'm not going to knock anybody for getting sucked back in. I know I'm getting sucked back in. Come on now. I told you that from the rip. Angry in the moment, but the second I see them on pace to win 50 games and be third in the Eastern Conference, I'm going to say, so you're telling me there's a chance. And I'd be right there. And, well, here I am. So we'll keep an eye on Daryl Morey because he's still on the prowl. We'll see what else happens later on. I tried my best to stay up as late as possible last night, and it just happened at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I did the best I could body-wise until I crashed. So appreciate you guys. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you on the next one. I was going to say enjoy the show. Show already happened. Peace!